In this lesson, we're going to look at finding the percentage of an amount using a calculator. And the first way we're going to look at doing this is using the percentage button on the calculator, if your calculator has that. And we're going to start off by finding 7.2% of £450. So on the calculator that I use, there's actually a specific percentage button. And in order to find that, I have to go to the catalog button, navigate down to probability, and then I see at the top this percentage button, which I can then type in. And in order to work out 7.2%, I want to type in 7.2. I've already got my percentage symbol, and then multiply that by £450. So that's the calculation I'm going to do. I'm going to hit the execute button in the bottom right, and it gives me this answer, which it gives me as a fraction. I'm going to hit format and turn it into a decimal since it's money. Even though we're working on our calculator, it's still good to write out what we put into our calculator. So we did 7.2% multiplied by £450, and that gave us this answer of £32. And it said 0.4 on our calculator, but because it's money, we want to put in that second decimal place. So £32.40. Now, I'm aware that you might be watching this video and you might not necessarily have the percentage button on your calculator. And so we need a different way of doing it, and that's by using what's called a decimal multiplier. So I can turn my 7.2% into a decimal. And to do that, we simply divide by 100. So I'll go over to my calculator, I'll type in 7.2, I'll divide it by 100 to turn it into a decimal, and it gives me this decimal, 0.072. And then I'll take my £450 and I'll multiply it by 0.072. Now, this is a decimal. It's equivalent to what we did above because 7.2% is equal to 0.072. So there really is no difference. It will give us the same answer. I'll do 450 multiplied by my answer, which is already stored as 0.072. And that gives me this answer of 32.4, same as what we had above. Give this question a go, and if your calculator has the percentage button, practice using it. If it doesn't, just use the decimal multiplier method that I showed you. Okay, so we need to find 123.8% of $3,560. Now I want us to notice that we're finding 123% of something, and we always assume that the starting number that we're given is 100%. And so what that means is when we find 123.8%, we're expecting an answer bigger than $3,560. So we want to go into the question with that in mind. Let's look at using our percentage button to do this. The calculation I'll be typing into my calculator is 123.8% multiplied by $3,560. Obviously, that's not going to be typed into our calculator. So I'll go to my catalog, down to probability. It gives me that percentage button. I type in 123.8%, multiply that by $3,560, and hit the execute button, turn it into a decimal, and I get this answer. It's $4,407.28. If you didn't do it that way, you could do it like this. Turn 123.8% into a decimal multiplier by dividing by 100. That gives you 1.238. And then take your dollars, your 3,560, and multiply it by the 1.238. And that will have given you the same answer. So in this example, we're just going to use the decimal multiplier method. So we want to find 0.4% of 8,500 kilograms. So the first thing I want to do is I want to turn my 0.4% into a decimal by dividing by 100. And you might need your calculator to do that, or if you're happy with the place value, you could turn it into this without your calculator. I'll then take my 8,500 kilograms and I'm going to multiply it by my 0.4%. See, as a decimal, it's this. And that calculation goes into my calculator. So 8,500 multiplied by 0.004. And that, I was expecting it to turn a decimal, and that gives me an answer of 34 kilograms. Give this question a go. So we take our 1.9%, divide it by 100 to turn it into that decimal multiplier, and that gives us 0.019. Take your 4,230 milliliters and multiply it by the 0.019. And just type that in your calculator. And then hit the execute button. And it gives you this. It gives you 80.37 milliliters. And that should have been what you got. The last type of example we're going to look at is what we do when we get a recurring decimal in our percentage. So here we have 44.4 recurring. That little dot above tells me that that 4-digit recurs indefinitely. And we want to find 44.4 recurring percent of 9,999 pounds. My calculator doesn't have a dedicated recurring decimal button, so I need to force my calculator to recognize the recurring digit. So I'm going to turn my 44.4 recurring percent into a decimal by dividing by 100, and that would be equal to 0.4 recurring. And in order to force the calculator to register the recurring digit, I need to type in the digit 4, according to a bit of research I've done, 17 times. So I need to type it in quite a lot. And I've done it quite a lot. And then if I hit execute, if you notice, it pops up as that fraction. That tells me it's turned it into this recurring decimal. I'll take that recurring decimal, the 0.4 recurring, that's now stored in my calculator as the answer, and multiply that by 9,999. So I just hit multiply. I don't need to store it as the answer. It already is. So I just hit multiply. If you notice, the answer button pops up. I multiply that by my 9,999 and hit my execute, and it gives me an answer of 4,444. That's one way to do it. The other way is to recognize that 0.4 recurring is equal to 4/9. And that's one of those patterns that it's helpful to know. 0.1 recurring is 1/9, and 0.2 recurring is 2/9, and so on. So if you knew that 0.4 recurring was 4/9, all you'd have to do in your calculator is type in 4/9 multiplied by the 9,999. So you go to your fraction button, you type in 4/9 multiplied by your 9,999, and it gives you your answer that we had before. Pause the video and give this question a go. So we want to work out 12.3% of £300. 12.3% we're going to convert into a decimal multiplier by dividing by 100. And that's going to give you 0.12. And this digit 3 is the one that recurs. These two digits don't recur, they just occur once. It's the digit 3 that's going to recur indefinitely. I'm going to type into my calculator 0.123 recurring multiplied by the £300. So how would I get that into my calculator? Well, I type 0.12, and then because I want this digit 3 to recur, I'm going to type it a lot of times. So just keep going for quite a while. And then when I'm satisfied I've done it enough, I will multiply that by the 300, and it pops out as that whole number answer of 37. If you're using our lesson booklets, you can now complete exercises 1 and 2. Thank you for watching the video.